California's second major earthquake in 32 days rocks Bakersfield, leaving hardly a building in the downtown area undamaged. But despite the extent of the damage, only 2 persons were killed and 27 injured. Thousands were on the streets and in the stores of the farming and oil drilling center 85 miles north of Los Angeles when disaster struck.
The initial earthquake was July 21st, 1952. It devastated Tehachapi and Arvin. The following month, August 22nd of 1952, there was an aftershock, and this aftershock pretty much devastated Bakersfield. The initial earthquake in Tehachapi was a 7.5. The Bakersfield earthquake, I've seen 5.8 to 6.0. Caltech reported it as at a 6.0. So it was a pretty good aftershock.
Okay, there were 2 big ones, and one occurred in the morning about sunrise. And I was in bed asleep, and I woke up to the room shaking. And my bed didn't move, and I didn't fall out of bed, but a large bookcase, which I have in the other room, just did a 90-degree turn, walked across the floor, and ended up parked at my bed.
I am sitting in front of the library tent. After the Bakersfield earthquake, it put a lot of buildings out of use, and a lot of the county buildings were disabled, and so they moved those services into parking lots in tents. It looked like a war zone, and a lot of people I've spoken with who experienced it said they thought it was a nuclear war. I mean, 1952, we're in the middle of the Cold War, the Korean War is just winding down, so nerves are a little edgy at the time. If you look at photos and video, you'll see bricks in the middle of the street and glass and sides of buildings missing. We did have 2 people who were killed because buildings collapsed on them.
When this building collapsed, it was a dress shop. And in the afternoon earthquake, the walls spread and the roof fell down. And that's what killed the people. From a coincidence, my ex-wife later worked in that store. I went down in the basement. It's just masonry with mortar, no iron, no rebar, no support, just brick. The walls that were up above the ground, when they spread, then that ceiling came down.
There were 193 classrooms that were totally put out of use. Some schools fared better than others. Some were completely lost and weren't rebuilt.
I went to a little country school. Then I go into the high school downtown. And a lot of those buildings were damaged where we couldn't be inside. And so we went to school in tents. Gradually the school was rebuilt, and then by the time I graduated, it was all like it used to be.
Governor Warren, who was a graduate of Kern County Union High School, which is now Bakersfield High School, when he surveyed the damage, he pledged that a lot of the relief from construction bonds would go to Bakersfield for rebuilding the schools, because education was a major important thing to him. Earl Warren was very instrumental in getting funding for the rehabilitation of Bakersfield. Made some promises that we were going to get some funds, and we did. He followed up on that. We were able to rebuild from it. So the economic impact was in the millions of dollars, 50 million or more. On the other hand, there was so much rebuilding and demolition that it actually stimulated our economy and created jobs, created new buildings. They immediately started rebuilding. There were buildings condemned, tore down, rebuilt, or relocated. We did lose some landmarks. Probably the pride of the city at the time, well, that could be debatable, but was the clock tower, which sat at the center of 17th and Chester. A lot of people before the earthquake wanted that to be torn down because it was, it was in the middle of the road. People would run into it. There was damage to the top of the tower, and they immediately they took that as an opportunity to tear it down. They tore it down. It has been since rebuilt, and it's in front of the Kern County Museum, so we didn't totally lose that. One of the other buildings was the courthouse, and the courthouse was built at the end of the 1800s, and very, very beautiful building, and it put up a really good fight coming down. They had bulldozers and cranes trying to smash it down. At the time, right before the earthquake, there was a move to renew the city and create new buildings. We had a lot of old buildings. Mayor Frank Sullivan said that what we had was urban renewal by an act of God. And so it kind of It kind of was the impetus for Bakersfield to create new buildings, build new buildings, and create a new city. Well, last year was the 60th anniversary. I put together a couple of programs here at the library. One was bringing people who had experienced it together to talk about it, and we put things up like the poster behind me and other photos to kind of stimulate conversation, and we just let people talk. One of the arguments was over, should the buildings have been torn down, especially the courthouse. A lot of people wanted to get rid of it because they saw it as a monstrosity, this stuck out like a sore thumb, and others wanted to preserve it because it was a historical building and it was very reminiscent of courthouses you would see on the East Coast. So there was, some bitter feelings, I think, even to this day. Disasters hit us, from time to time, and it demonstrates how, the resolve of our citizens, of our people, that, yeah, we get knocked down, but we do continue, we rebuild. It's important to document these stories. It also stresses the importance for better building standards. A number of buildings came down. I mean, people were crushed by buildings. That's how they died. That's something that needed to be addressed, and it's revisited from time to time in the state legislature and in the city, the cities and counties. If you wanted to research this, the local history room here at the Kern County Library is one of the best places. We've got huge files with newspaper clippings and seismic reports and Caltech reports and photographs. I mentioned we've got video, raw video, about 15, 20 minutes worth of raw video. It progresses, and so initially you see really not very many people out on the street, but then towards the end of the video you see cars, people going back to their day-to-day duties and routines and what have you. So it's something that's revisited pretty regularly. A lot of the local newspapers will run the stories again and look for people who have experienced it. But the people who experience earthquake are getting older, so it is important to try and identify as many people as possible and document their stories. So.